Well, welcome back, folks. In today's episode, we're going to continue on with the work on the wheels for the Suzuki TS50. I've already got the tire and tube off the front wheel over on the other bench, and we'll move over there in just a second and take a look at that in a little more detail. And we're going to continue on with delacing the wheel, pulling the bearings out of the hub so I can prepare it, clean it, prepare it for powder coating, inspect the bearings in case I need to order new parts, and generally completely break down or disassemble the wheels, both the front and the rear. So let's move over to the other bench and we'll continue on with this project. As I mentioned a moment ago, this is the front wheel for the Suzuki TS50 Gaucho. Getting the tire off was no problem. I almost could remove it by hand by just forcing it off the rim. It's such a small, lightweight tire. Again, I do think this is the original. We're not going to spend really any time talking about the tire outside of the fact that it's in reasonably good shape for its age. The tube has no patches in it that I could find, and I'm not sure if this is original or not. There's no name brand on it that I can find. That leads me to believe it's probably a replacement aftermarket tube, but I don't know for sure. And the rim band or strip, I suspect, is the original. You can see right there it's deteriorated. That obviously will be replaced as well. So we're not going to spend any time or any more time talking about the tire at this point. The rim itself, again, very good condition. Inside here is in very good shape. We're going to end up delacing all of this, obviously, so that I can pull the bearings. It's got a sealed bearing, a shielded sealed bearing right here. And there's a seal in here I'll have to pull out. And I think there's a spindle in there I'll have to take a look at as well. The front hub, again, in pretty good condition for its age. I don't know if you can see in there, there's some pink grease. I don't know how well you can see in there. I think that's the same grease that the triple tree or steering stem bearings are greased with, and it looks fresh, so I'm guessing the previous owner had pulled this apart and re-greased that drive gear in there for the speedometer. Brake shoes, not in too bad a condition. I have no idea how they measure against specifications, but eventually we'll get into that. Springs are in very good shape. Those are reusable, I think. There's a seal in here, right here. I have not been able to find the part number for that yet on Suzuki parts diagrams. I'm sure it's out there somewhere, but so far that has eluded me. Obviously that's going to have to come out as well. All of these parts are going to have to come off, including possibly removing this, threaded fitting right here for the speedometer. Obviously this will come off the actuator arm for the brake shoes, so that we can strip and repaint and powder coat this front hub. The same thing will happen on the front and the rear hubs. But generally speaking, it's in good condition for its age. It's been well cared for, been stored inside. I don't think it's got a lot of use on it. And the axle itself does show a little bit of tool marks, some tool marks, but not bad. I've seen them a lot worse. That can probably be polished up and look fine. I don't know if I'll have to replate that. And this as well, throw them in my tumbler and probably clean them up. They don't look like they've got corrosion on them, just a little grease and dirt and filth from being down at the ground level. So this will all have to come apart. And of course, a delacing of the hub itself. I'm not going to show all that because that's a little bit time consuming. I have already documented this this spoke pattern, even though I know it's just intuitively, I know it's a standard pattern. I've done dozens of these in my life, but I always document each wheel independently as I take them apart, so I have a record of them, and then I'll be able to get into the hub itself and pull the bearings and see what's going on in there. So I'll bring you back after I've got this wheel delaced. That is, all the spokes have been removed, and we can get into the hub a little bit deeper. Got got the wheel all apart. These are the spokes. I've got them grouped. I don't know if you can tell by looking at that, but I have them grouped by inners and outers for each side of the hub. So this is one side of the hub, this is the other, though it doesn't frankly make a lot of difference. But as I take these things apart, I like to just keep them organized as I go on rather than go back later on and try to figure it out. So as I took the spokes apart, I grouped them and set them aside into bundles and just zip tied them together like you see there, along with the nipples that go with the spokes, of course. So these spokes and nipples right now, is for all practical purposes, I'm done with them, unless for some reason I had to have them replated because I couldn't get NOS or new, but I think I can. So these are going to be organized and just set aside. If I sell the rims later on, both the front and the rear, then I will sell the spokes and nipples probably with them. So we will consider that part of the project complete at this point. Taking a look at the hub itself, again, this is a shielded, metal shielded bearing on this side. Very common, very typical. I don't know if you can see inside of there, but it does have, again, this is also very common. Let me get a light for you here. You can see right here, they stamped or put into the casting maximum diameter 110.7 millimeters. That's the maximum size of this brake drum. So I will measure that, but I'm pretty sure that's probably okay. On the opposite side, we have this, what they call a shield. It fits over that seal. There's a seal right here. And I think that's just an insert, probably. Usually what they are. Yeah, it's just an insert. Fits inside of that shield right, or that seal right there. So I will leverage this seal out. Again, I don't right off the top know if that's still available, but I will try to be reasonable about removing it without damaging it in case I have to reuse it. Probably can get one though. Pull this oil seal out, dust seal, and then I think there's probably a spindle in here. In fact, that's what that looks like right there. You can see me spinning it with my fingers. There usually is a spindle. And in fact, if I recall from the parts diagram, there's a spindle in here. So then once I get the seal out, we'll have to drive the bearings out. There's one here, obviously, and there's one inside of here. And I probably will have to heat this unit up to drive the bearing out, but we'll get to that in a few minutes. Let me get this seal out of here first. Now we're going to go ahead and try to pull this seal. You can see my seal puller. You probably have seen this before. You could use a good quality flat bladed screwdriver, but if I can get my seal puller in there, I prefer to use this. You'll notice that I have taped quite extensively with heavy duct tape right here pointing to, because that will bear against this alloy part of the hub here, and I don't want to put a mark if I can avoid it, because I have to leverage against that hub. You can also heat these hubs if you want. Normally I find that with a rubber type or soft seal like this, I don't have to heat the hub to get it out, but you certainly could. And the way this will work is I'll take the smaller end here, and again there's two different sizes of hooks. And you want to get that underneath the seal like that. And I'm going to have to turn this around so that I can get leverage on it like that. And you can see here, I think, where the tool is going to bear against the hub. And I'm going to just leverage that out like that. It's not in too bad a shape, actually. A little dirty maybe, but those usually come up pretty easily. Here's that spindle I was talking about, so I don't know if we're going to tap that through from the other side. I'm going to study this a little bit and we'll be right back. Looked over the hub pretty carefully and I did check the parts diagrams, and again there is a spindle in there. You probably can't see it turning when I spin the inner race here of the bearing. but there is a metal sleeve or spindle in there. I think they actually call it a spacer in the parts book. But what I need to do, and you can see the bearing, obviously, we talked about that already right here. What I'm going to do is take my heat gun and I'm going to heat this part of the hub right here where the bearing, this bearing fits. And then I'm going to take this driver and I can just catch the edge of that inner, I don't know if you can see that there or not, the inner race, and drive that bearing out this way. So I'll turn it upside down like this and then drive the bearing that way. But the first thing I need to do is heat this, get it good and hot, and then flip it over and drive it out. There, I got that hub pretty hot. Now we'll see if we can't get that bearing to move on the other side. In fact, you can see it's moved already. There it is. And I've got to be careful with that because it's hot, but that's got some pretty nice grease in it. There's that spacer I was talking about. So it's good and hot, so I'm going to let that cool down for a few minutes so I don't burn myself. That bearing's in excellent shape. There's nothing wrong with it. This isn't fresh grease. In other words, this isn't grease I think that the previous owner put in. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with that bearing, so that will not have to be replaced. Obviously, this was not exposed to moisture anywhere or any time in its life. No rust, no corrosion. So the spacer looks pristine as well. So these parts can be cleaned up and reused. In terms of the hub, also, again, look at the inside here, looks very good condition. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat this side of the hub, and there's a bearing, this bearing right here is inside here. I don't know if you can see that or not, but I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to heat this up really well, and then I'm going to take just a driver like this. This is brass. I don't like to use steel on these bearings if I can help it. And see if I can't just drive that bearing out like I did that one. Once that's done, when the hub will be apart as far as it can go or it needs to go, it'll be cleaned up. I'll remove the paint and that'll be ready for powder coating. Once it's clean, we'll move on to the this hub here, and this brake backer plate. Now we'll do the same thing we just did a few moments ago. And there we have the second bearing. This one's warm, but not quite as hot as the other one was. And again, that looks to be in perfect shape as well. Grease isn't quite as good as the other one, but that's in good shape too. So now we've got the hub stripped of the bearings and seals, and we'll move on now to disassembling this brake backer plate, which is a little bit more involved. I've got to get the arm off here, and that's pretty straightforward. And I'm going to see if I can't get this fitting out here for the speedometer drive. There's a little tiny screw right there that I have to get out. These can be a little tricky sometimes. Snap ring, pull this drive gear out. The brake shoes will come off no problem. The seal Got to examine that a little closer. Again, I haven't been able to find the part number for that. The parts diagram is a little iffy on this part of the assembly, so I've got to study that further. Well, let's go ahead and get this apart. I'm going to first remove the arm here, get that off, remove the shoes, and then we'll continue on. I want to talk about this seal right here. I think this has been apart before. In other words, the seal's been removed before, because I can see mark, I don't know if you can see it, but right where I'm pointing to right there, I don't know if you can see that. Looks like it's been pried out before. It's in pretty good shape, but it looks like it has been removed. Also, there's a O-ring right here. This is the cam, activates the brakes. That just slides out. And then we can probably just pop this little O-ring out, if I can get underneath it, like that. Probably still available from Suzuki. It's pretty hard. In fact, that's very hard. But back to this seal, sometimes I can just get these out with my fingers, like that. I do have my puller if I need it, but sometimes they'll just pop right out. Sometimes they won't, but I'm pretty sure this seal's been out before. And as a matter of course, I typically, if I can replace seals, I can get them. Again, this one's got me a little confused right now. But that's fresh grease in there, so what I need to do now is remove that little tiny screw right there. See if I can get this gear assembly, drive gear assembly out, because I need to powder coat this, and obviously I don't want to powder coat it with that in there and that grease, because it'll be tough to get all that, absolutely all that grease out, leaving that in. If I get it out, that is the drive gear out, I can clean it a lot better than trying to leave it in and powder coat it, because it will probably mess things up. So let me get a little screwdriver and we'll pull that out. That little tiny screw is a little slotted screw, you can see right there. And I cleaned the slot out with this very fine pick. I think I made it from a paper clip years ago. And I keep it ground to a very sharp point. And what I wanted to do was go in there and clean that slot out to make sure I can get my appropriate size screwdriver in there like that. You want a good fit between the screwdriver and that little tiny screw. If you bugger that up, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to end up drilling it out and it's going to get messy, and you just want to avoid that. So I've cleaned that slot out with that little pick. I've got a good quality, proper fitting screwdriver. Now you can, if you want to, heat this up. You can do that here as well. I don't think I'm going to have to, but we'll take it slow and easy here and see if we can't get that screw out. Yeah, and there it comes. right there. And obviously, you don't want to lose that. That is what holds, or supposed to hold, this assembly in place here. Sometimes these can be a bugger to get out, sometimes not. Sometimes if they haven't been out in years, and this one probably has never been out, that is, this whole assembly slides out, you have to get creative with them. I'm just testing here to see how tight it is, and it's pretty tight. So what I think I'm going to have to do is I'm going to clean all the grease out of here with some brake cleaner, paper towel, and get the most of that grease out. You can see here, so I can get a better look at what I got to deal with. I'm probably going to end up heating this assembly up here and taking one of my brass drivers, probably a smaller one than this one, and I might end up trying to drive that out somehow. I'm going to resist the urge to grab a hold here and pull. What you could do, I suppose, is find a nut that would fit that. It's probably a fine thread, not a common thread either. Find a nut and then grab a hold of the nut with a pliers or something similar. That might work as well. But I'm going to clean this up first, take a better look at it, and decide my approach from there. I have the parts all cleaned up. Got the worst of the grease out of there so I can see what I'm dealing with. As you can see there, I did find this nut. This is not the right nut. This is a fine thread. This is not. I think that's a 10 millimeter, but it does thread on far enough that if I had to, I'm thinking I could use pliers and grab a hold of this and see if I could pull it. That's not going to be my first attempt to remove this though. What I am going to do is put a glove on. You can see I've got my spare vise set up with the soft jaws. I'm going to heat this right in this area right here to try to get the metal to expand. Then I'm probably going to take a screwdriver and carefully work it in here. I don't know if you can see that. You got to be careful because you don't want to damage this casting. See if I can get it to move. Otherwise, I will probably end up taking next a punch or a driver and see if I can't drive that out, or a screwdriver. I could use one of my, I probably wouldn't use this one, but I would use another screwdriver, drive that out that way. And generally try to get this assembly to move out. Once I get it to start to move, I can probably grab it here, or maybe it'll just come right out. I don't know. But I'm going to heat it first, and I've got to wear a glove because this whole thing is going to get hot. And then I'm going to clamp it in the jaw vise, something like that. And I know that these jaws might be affected by the heat. I really don't care. These are, for all practical purposes, disposable items, and they're consumables. But I've got to secure this in such a way that I can get a grip on it. And I'm not sure I can hold it in my hands and drive that out all at the same time. So I've got to secure it some way. That's why I'm using this this vise. I'll probably clamp it something like that, and then just secure it tight enough that I can work in here. Now you're not going to be able to see all of that. I'll reposition the camera a bit and try to share with you as much as I can, but you have to appreciate the fact that trying to get in there with the camera might not be all that easy. And there's the part right there. Didn't need to use the nut. I think you can see it right there. It's good and hot. There's a thrust washer right where my thumb is right there. I tried to avoid damaging that. There's probably one on the other end too. But I'll check the parts diagrams and see. Well, there we have it. We've got the front hub pretty much broken down completely as far as we need to go. So what I'm going to do now is I'll organize myself a little bit here. I got parts all over the place. Get things bagged and tagged. Then I'll start cleaning some of these items up. This is the one part I'm probably the most concerned about right now, this seal. I got to figure that out, but we'll get this cleaned up and organized and preparing for powder coat, which would be at another time, of course. I think I'm going to call this video a wrap at this point with this front wheel. We will pick up this series with the rear wheel, where we'll do essentially the same thing. It'll be very similar in most respects, and that will be the next video. Any issues, questions, thoughts, drop me a note. Otherwise, as usual, thanks for watching.